April 1941. Under the code name Operation Marita, German and Italian forces invade Greece. Within weeks, Greek defenses collapse, and the country is divided between German, Italian, and Bulgarian zones of control. Under the occupation, repression and famine become part of everyday life. Garrisons patrol the countryside, control key roads as well as cities, but resistance movements continue to fight, creating bases in the Greek mountains. By the summer of 1943, as Italy's power crumbles and German forces prepare to seize full control of the region, violence surges once again. War and the killing of innocents reach also the village of Mousiotitsa, home to about 800 people whom Germans accuse of helping partisans. During two assaults, on the 25th of July and the 27th of August 1943, soldiers belonging to the 1st Mountain Division of the German Army unleash a wave of terror. Homes are looted and burned, and 153 villages, including 63 children, are murdered. However, these atrocities will not remain unpunished, and the perpetrators will pay for their crimes with their own lives. The 1st Mountain Division, known as the Edelweiss Division, had a reputation for toughness and discipline. It was an elite formation of Alpine troops drawn from Bavaria and Austria, trained to fight in snow, forests, and rocky terrain. The soldiers wore the white Edelweiss flower on their caps as a symbol of their courage, but by 1943 it had become a mark of bloody terror. The division had fought since the Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939 in Poland, France, Yugoslavia, and the Eastern Front, where it had taken part in the invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941 and the brutal anti-partisan warfare in the Caucasus. Its men had burned villages, shot prisoners, and killed civilians without question. When the unit arrived in Greece in June 1943, the order it carried from the German High Command was simple: crush the resistance by any means necessary. The resistance in the region of Epirus, located in northwestern Greece, was led mainly by the National Republican Greek League, also known as the EDES movement. Founded by Napoleon Zervas, a veteran of the Greek army, EDES was a nationalist, anti-communist force, and its fighters operated from mountain hideouts, ambushing German patrols and sabotaging bridges and roads. They were well organized, but small in number, and relied heavily on the local population for food, shelter, and information about the enemy. To the Germans, this meant that every village that offered bread or a place to sleep was a bandit base, and the villagers themselves were no longer civilians. They were enemies. When 9 German soldiers were killed in an ambush near the village of Kopani on the 18th of July 1943, the commander of the 98th Regiment of the 1st Mountain Division, Josef Salminger, demanded blood in return, and chose as his target the village of Mousiotitsa, located in the central part of the Epirus region. Generalmajor Walter Stettner von Grabenhofen, commander of the division, approved the operation without hesitation, and on the 24th of July, a German plane circled above Mousiotitsa, dropping leaflets that warned the villagers not to leave. It was a trap. And the next morning, on the 25th of July, lorries full of German troops rumbled up the narrow mountain roads. 4 separate groups from the 98th Regiment surrounded the village at dawn. One of them was commanded by Willibald Röser from the 12th Company, who was already known among his men as the Nero of 1298 for his cruelty and his pleasure in destruction and using violence against civilian population. The soldiers took their positions quietly, blocking every path out of the village. When German troops entered Mousiotitsa, they started firing into houses and shouting orders in a German language that only few villagers understood. They kicked in doors, dragged people into the streets, and shot anyone who tried to run. Old men were beaten, and women were forced to hand over valuables and food before being herded into the village square. Cows and goats were seized. Homes were looted and then set on fire. Smoke rolled down the slopes as flames caught the dry thatch of the roofs. Families who tried to hide in the hills were hunted down and shot. Those who survived the first sweep were forced to march under guard to a plateau above the village known as Spithari, a place that had once served as a refuge during Ottoman raids. By the afternoon, villagers stood together there, guarded by soldiers with machine guns. Among the civilians were mothers with babies in their arms, children clutching to each other, and the elderly leaning on their canes. The Germans made them stand in rows, waiting for their fate. When the order was given, the machine guns began to fire in long bursts, sweeping through the crowd. The villagers fell in waves. Some screamed, others tried to crawl away, but the soldiers moved among them and fired again at the wounded. When it was over, 136 dead bodies lay on the ground. As there were few of young men between the survivors, the idea of digging a mass grave was abolished and corpses were thrown into a dry well. For days, the smell of smoke and death hung in the air, and dogs roamed among the ruins, but the massacre had not weakened the resistance. On the contrary, it had only filled the hills with more rage and more will for revenge. Surprisingly, the Germans returned on the 27th of August, 1943. The reason was that another German officer was killed near the area, so the same German unit, again led by Röser's company, struck Mousiotitsa once more. They accused several families of cooking for partisans and executed 17 people on the spot. The victims were shot in front of their homes, their bodies left in the street as a warning to others. By the end of that bloody summer, 153 villagers were dead, including 63 children under 16. The official German report claimed that the 12th Company had been fired upon and had destroyed a bandit nest, and in a response, they killed 100 bandits. It was a typical falsification used by the Wehrmacht, the German armed forces, to disguise massacres of the civilians as legitimate military actions. In reality, no German had been attacked by the villagers, and no partisan had been found in their homes and village. The killing of the unarmed population was deliberate, systematic, and coldly executed, an act of pure terror designed to intimidate inhabitants of the Epirus region. Musotitsa was only the first in a series of atrocities committed by the 1st Mountain Division in western Greece. The same pattern was repeated across the region, with entire settlements surrounded and burned, and their inhabitants shot either on the spot or near their homes. Each time, the orders came from above, and each time, civilians were murdered as examples. The soldiers, hardened by years of war in the East, treated these killings as routine. Even though the 1st Mountain Division, Edelweiss, had once prided itself on courage and discipline, in the mountains of Greece, those words turned once again to ashes. Its men had fought not against armies, but against unarmed villagers, farmers, shepherds, elderly, women, and children. They left behind not victory, but silence and grief. But the cycle of vengeance that Germans had set in motion did not spare them. On the 1st of October 1943, Josef Salminger, the man who had demanded the destruction of Mousiotitsa from his superiors, was ambushed and killed by Greek partisans. His death unleashed another wave of reprisals, as 2 days later, German soldiers from the same division entered the village of EDES and massacred 92 civilians, men, women, and children including infants. The youngest victim was only 6 months old. Generalmajor Walter Stettner von Grabenhofen, the architect of this policy of terror, remained in command of the division until the 18th of October 1944. In October of that year, during the Soviet Belgrade offensive, his unit was cut off and Stettner von Grabenhofen went missing in action near Belgrade. Unconfirmed reports suggest he was captured and executed by Yugoslav partisans, and his body was never recovered. Another of the perpetrators and leader of the massacre in Mousiotitsa, Willibald Röser, the Nero of 1298, survived until the final months of the war, but justice met him when he was killed in an Allied air raid in the German city of Freiburg in November 1944. When Germany surrendered on the 8th of May 1945, the remnants of the 1st Mountain Division surrendered to the British in Austria. Though many officers tried to portray themselves as honorable soldiers fighting partisans, not as war criminals, some were extradited to Yugoslavia, where they faced trial for atrocities committed there and were executed. After the end of World War II, the Cold War soon overshadowed the crimes of the Wehrmacht. However, for the people of Mousiotitsa, there was no forgetting. Among the ruins of burnt houses and empty fields, the survivors rebuilt their homes stone by stone, and monuments commemorating the victims of the massacres have been erected on the execution site and the village itself. To this day, these places serve as a reminder of the fate of hundreds of people who were forcibly removed from their homes and murdered by the occupiers of their country.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.